Hey, you guys, welcome back to another episode of Walking Away from Lukewarm Living. I'm your host, Suli, and I just wanted to mention just a little shout out for myself that today that I am recording this episode marks exactly 6 months ago when I decided to walk into the gym for the very first time. And that's not going to be the topic of our episode, but I just want to preface and say that um, let's just be an encouragement or reminder for those of you who are working towards a certain goal and you're barely starting. And I just want to say that there's a lots of ups and downs. Sometimes things will feel near impossible, or it genuinely feels like there's no way out, yada, yada, yada. But you'll look back as time progresses and thank yourself that you did it anyway, because that is something that I am experiencing exactly in this moment. I just can't believe that it's already been 6 months. So, to move on to the topic of this episode, I wanted to talk about my childhood, and in the sense of what the transition was like from being raised as an only child to transitioning to having siblings. I was an only child until I was 14 years old. And let's see, about 3 months or so after I turned, or about 2.5 months after I turned 14, one of my little sisters were born. And I was in high school at the time, and I had to wake up about 5 a.m. in the morning because of the bus and everything with school starting. And I remember she'd cry in the middle of the night. It'd be 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And I remember just feeling extremely exhausted because I truly did not get to get as much sleep as that I needed or wanted or whatever for my, my body growing up and puberty and, this and that. And so I remember I'd go to school really, really, oh my goodness, I remember really, really exhausted. It felt like I had, my own baby basically, because of being waking up in the middle of the night. She would scream on the top of her lungs. You could hear it throughout the whole house. And they would bring her into the living room, which is directly across from my room. And so I just started thinking about it in the sense of feeling a bit, maybe the word is resentful, in the sense of, or rather grieving my old life. And I didn't understand any better, because like I said, I grew up as an only child. But even as she was growing up, and then our other little sister was born about a year and 2 months later or something like that, I just could see how it was changing me and the way I saw people, the way I saw the world, the way I even saw myself. And that's because it gave me a sense of responsibility for another individual, a baby, that I had never really had. And so I grew up as an only child and stuff like that. But I'm kind of one of the older cousins, if that makes any sense. And so I didn't since my little cousins were so small, I think I didn't really understand it, in the sense, because that's my cousin. It's not like a sibling that I have to live with or watch or whatever. So I remember growing up, I really wasn't one that liked babies at all. I felt like they cried too much and this and that, and then I was humbled very quickly whenever I back to back was given to siblings. And with such a big age gap, it makes me think about how life was so different before they were born. And I remember growing up always wanting siblings, of course, as many only children will tell you, feeling very lonely, but also just learning to truthfully like my own space and my own solitude. And so when that was disturbed, that was very um hard for me to adjust to, because I feel like neurochemically I had to adjust to this new environment. And even now, as I get older, I think that there's from time to time where I do need my space, not even just from them, but like in general, to where I need time to decompress and whatnot. I would say that my little sisters are much more extroverted than I am, and that's a good thing. I'm glad that they're able to put themselves out more and whatnot, and ask for what they want, and more capably than I definitely was at that age. I would definitely say I was a Velcro kid to my mom. um I definitely liked being by her side and stuff like that. And so essentially, when my little sister's dad came around and stuff like that, uh I just assumed that there'd be a sibling, and when it didn't happen for many years. At first, I was like a little confused, especially when I was younger, but as I got older, like it really wasn't something I would think about anymore. And so when they were born, it definitely was like at a point in my life where it's like I would tell my mom, like, and she understands, like, it's like, oh, like I was finally entering high school, and I wanted to explore these different things, like go out with friends or join these different clubs and everything. And I just felt like instead of, like maybe um doing things over the summer, I was at home, making bottles and uh burping babies, and like like literally I was raising at home to like a year, like how do you say, like 202, right? And for someone that didn't know how to change a diaper or really make a bottle, because I didn't really care or want to having to learn that like basically overnight was definitely something that matured me very quickly. I felt like I grew up incredibly fast, because you hear a lot about teen pregnancy and stuff like that, but even though these two weren't my children, at 14, 15 years old, um I helped carry that weight, because my mom had to work full time and everything. And now, even as time has progressed, they're already um older now, of course, as many years have passed by. But I would say that it's interesting, because I was very much a Velcro, kid, like with my mom, like I mentioned, but I feel like they have their moments where they can be very quote unquote Velcro with me. And I think it's just because of the fact that, it's like they even tell me, like, I see you as a mom as well. And there are times where it definitely does make me feel good. It flatters me, but and then there are other times where I think I a part of me sees it as I wish I could have just been your sister. But I think a lot of older, like the oldest daughter, can relate to that, in the sense of feeling like a mother to your younger siblings, in the sense of wanting to protect them and whatnot. And because I feel like, obviously older brothers help protect and take care of their younger siblings, but it's like a different relationship, I would say. Not, I don't know, it's like not as maternal, I don't know. But regardless, I mean, I don't have any brothers, so I really don't know what that's like. Um, but I guess whenever I was younger, that transition into having siblings to this day is something that I don't think I'll ever be able to truly forget. Like we all have transitions in our lives that go like very quickly and we just forget about them. And then there's some that are very gradual that, we can forget about them too. But there's just something like in me that I know that it was like a switch that changed. And I didn't even, even after they were born and stuff like that, I still didn't want kids. I still really wasn't like a very big fan of babies regardless. I obviously I loved and still love them and take care of them and whatnot, but I feel like it wasn't until maybe a few years ago, where um I started changing my mind about kids. And I think it's interesting because I can't really describe it, but I truly do feel like helping raise them and teaching them their colors, their numbers, how to read, like, all of that, taking them to their appointments, listening to them, driving them places, giving them food, taking care of them when they're sick, like things like that. I truly do feel like it made me have more love and compassion for other people's children, like at a rate that I did not anticipate. Not that I didn't want it, but I just didn't know that was going to happen. But also at the same time, the same year or the year after, when my first sister was born, I started volunteering at this place that's with with special needs, or physical health or anything like that, like children that fall under that spectrum, in the sense of like critical illnesses. And it's a place called Give Kids a World. So I started doing that when I was like 14 or 15 years old. I truly can't remember, but I do know that my 10-year anniversary is coming up in September, so that's pretty cool to think about. But regardless, I just cannot wrap my head around the fact that it is going to be a day that will just represent, like everything coming a full circle all over again. And I'm just very grateful for the fact that, volunteering, taking care of children and teaching them and stuff like that, because I have tutored over the years as well, and I still do, and work in education as a sub. But, it's just like one of those things where I felt like it all started with them, because now that I'm doing the math, I want to say that I started like a year after my sister, around a little bit before my second sister was born. So yeah, I never really did any volunteer work with kids and stuff like that. I remember like one time in 5th grade we did like a little project or whatever with like the kindergartners, and I thought that was really cool. But I never really thought much of it. Like I didn't want to I wasn't really like wanting to volunteer at like daycares and stuff like that. But truly, I just want to reiterate, all over again, that I just never thought that life would turn out this way, because of them. And I think that I can just thank them truthfully with how my career has gone, and I'm absolutely fulfilled by it, even if it can be difficult sometimes. I'm not sure if, everything that I just said kind of covers everything as far as, how different my childhood was before and after they were born and stuff like that. But, that definitely is like a huge part of my life, which is something that I really wanted to talk about eventually sometime in this podcast. But either way, thank you so much for tuning in here on Walking Away from Lukewarm Living. I'm your host, Suli, and as always, God bless.